Game, a GameStop-like company over in the UK, have recently announced that they're no longer going to be accepting physical copies of video games for trade-in, leaving people everywhere stunned. I was surprised too, but not for the same reason as most other people. I was surprised because I've been waiting for something like this to happen for years. So the fact that it finally happened, it was just sort of one of those life moments where I was like, whoa, it's finally here. The moment has finally arrived. I was wholly expecting a company like Game or GameStop at some point to either indicate that they were going to be making a very drastic shift in their sales strategies moving forward, or that they were just going to close up shop entirely. And we all know why this is happening, right? Anybody out there who sees this headline, it's like, yeah, it's because digital video game libraries are becoming much more of a thing than physical copies, physical libraries at this point in time. That's why this is happening. And yes, while that's true, there's so much more behind that most people don't really dig into or talk about. And I want to discuss it here in this video today. Straight to the point, the bottom line here is that the hardware companies such as Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, as well as the major video game publishers and developers out there, they don't want companies like Game or GameStop to thrive in the marketplace because these companies hurt their bottom line. They hurt the bottom line of the people who are actually making our hardware and actually making our video games. And you might say, how is that possible? I mean, they're selling video games, they're selling the hardware. Like, how can they not be helping this industry out? Just think about an interaction when you go into these stores. I'm going to address GameStop here because I live in the United States and not the UK. So that's where I have the most experience. But a typical interaction at GameStop, right? You walk in through the door, you might pick up a new copy, which is gutted and opened already, by the way. You'll take a new copy of a game, bring it to the register, and the first thing that the associate behind the counter is going to say to you is, hey, just so you know, this game that costs $60 brand new or $70, you can save $5 if you buy it pre-owned. Can I interest you in getting a pre-owned copy today? What these companies are doing, they are actively disincentivizing you from wanting to buy the new copy of the game. An average consumer is going to be excited. They're going to say, yeah, great. I would love to save $5. I don't care if the game is used. And they get their $5 cheaper game and they bring it home and they have a great time. But that game could end up being the best game that they've ever played in their life, and not a single penny of what they spent for it is going to the publishers, is going to the developers for making the game. Instead, the only person who profits from that is Game or GameStop. And that's just one interaction, right? The entire business of these companies is built upon taking these sales away from these companies in the video game industry. And they don't want that. They've never liked that. We had our first major clue. We talked about this on the channel not so long ago already, but the reveal of the Xbox One, right? Them revealing like, yeah, we're going to put DRM on the discs. And it's my opinion that wasn't so much done in order to make sure that you couldn't let your friend down the street just borrow a copy of a game for a while. The reason why they were doing that was so that you couldn't bring it back to a place like GameStop and offload the game so that someone else who's interested in that game buys a pre-owned copy and then again takes away a sale from them. They don't want that. They've never wanted it. And they knew, I think, they tried way too hard and too fast with the Xbox One to like force this to happen. But at that point, when the Xbox One had a lot of blowback, they knew this was too much, too soon. The rest of the industry took note. But they've been doing things in the industry ever since to condition you to be okay with collecting digital copies of video games and to curate digital libraries. I mean, think about it. We've been seeing these consoles out there, right? They've had subscription tiers where, you know, if you subscribe to Xbox Live Gold, you'll get some free games every month. If you subscribe to PS Plus, you'll get some free games every month. Subscribe to Game Pass, you'll have access to a whole library of games, and subscribe to the upper tiers of whatever PlayStation's offering, and you'll get some more games. This is all done to just sort of give you, like you're paying a monthly fee, but this is done to give you copies upon copies upon copies of digital games that you could add to your library, which, yes, are only acceptable as long as you stay subscribed. But the idea is to have you install an entire library worth of digital games through these platforms so that you get used to the idea of having digital games. And so you get comfortable with that. And has it worked? I mean, absolutely it's worked. I mean, these things have convinced people that like digital copies of video games are okay. And that's the thing. The only way to get people to be okay with such a dramatic shift in their purchasing habits is to do it over time, to not force their hand like the Xbox One was going to do with DRM on their discs for the games, but to do it gradually, to condition people to being okay with something. And while there are still a lot of people out there who want their physical copies of their video games, and that's the only way they'll get video games because they refuse to get into a digital ecosystem, the digital marketplace is here to stay. It's not going anywhere, and it's going to be the prevalent path moving forward. I mean, just take a look at this generation. The PlayStation 5 was launched, right? You had one machine that was only $400, no disk drive in it. It was all digital only. It was not going to accept discs of games anymore. You had the option still to spend $500 to get a PS5 with a disk drive for the people who prefer that, but they're giving you a choice. They're indicating, yeah, we're easing into this digital thing. Like in the future, there's going to be video game consoles, game playing options, which just don't have disk drives anymore. This is the future that we're heading toward. We saw the same thing this generation with the Xbox Series consoles. You have the Series X. It's a beast of a machine with a disk drive. But if you wanted to save a little bit of money, you could get the Xbox Series S, which was significantly cheaper, not only because the hardware specs overall were less than compared to the Series X, but also because it didn't have a disk drive. Now, moving forward here, I'm going to be addressing GameStop a bit more because I live in the United States and not in the UK, so I don't have experience with game. I have experience with GameStop, and for years, I've been speaking out against some of the really crummy, shady business practices that they've been employing in order to lie to you. One of the things that's a little sketchy to me is very often I would go to a store and I would see a new copy of a game sitting on the shelf and a pre-owned copy of a game sitting on the shelf. At times, I would see the pre-owned prices being higher than that of a new copy, right? That always bugged me a little bit. But one thing that's always stuck in my mind that's bothered me a great deal was back during the Nintendo Wii era. The Metroid Prime trilogy was very popular, okay? That was a nice release, but there weren't really that many copies made. And it was really hard to find the game or to find it at a good price when you did. I think you had to spend northwards of like $90 in order to acquire this thing. All of a sudden, after a while, it seemed like the Metroid Prime trilogy was available at virtually every GameStop, and they were tagged as pre-owned and they were being sold for like $84.99. That was suspicious. And what was happening behind the scenes was that GameStop had paid in order to have more copies of this game run up for themselves, for their store specifically, so that they could sell them. Yet they were still tagging them as pre-owned and selling them for an inflated premium price that was well over the original MSRP. One of the more recent things that they've decided to do in the latter half of 2023 is that anyone who's been into a company like GameStop before, you know that when you buy something, whether it's a controller or some other piece of hardware, they ask you, hey, do you want to get an extended service warranty on this thing? Basically, the way it works is, if this stops working for whatever reason, it becomes defective, as long as you have this service plan active with us, you bring it in, we'll give you a brand new one, no questions asked. And literally, that's how the associates at these stores always build it as, right? You bring it in, we'll give you a brand new one, as long as you either have the slip saying that you have the extended warranty plan, or if we can find it in the system for you. So what they've decided to do as of late is that if you bring something into the store and you have this extended service plan, they are no longer going to give you a brand new copy of whatever it is that you're bringing in that's defective. Instead, they're just going to give you a used one. Now, that's not what the associates have ever said to us behind the counter as consumers, ever. It's always, we'll give you a brand new one. However, if you look into the fine print of these plans, it doesn't specify that they have to give you a new thing of that. So GameStop just said,
yeah, we're not going to honor what we've been telling our customers anymore.
We're just going to give them the used thing. And because it's not pointed out in the fine print that it has to be a new item that we're giving them, we're just going to draw the line there, and we should be safe legally speaking. But I still think that this is like illegal in some capacity. Probably not, because if you point to the fine print, if you just read it, a lot of the times when it comes to law, as long as it's posted or put somewhere where the consumer could have seen it, right, that seems to constitute as notice in a lot of cases, right? But the fact that you actually have people at the stores always telling the customers, yeah, it's a new one, and then you're going to go double back on that and say, no, we're not going to honor what we told you. We're going to point to the fine print for legal reasons, and that's it. Have a nice day. It really shows us that they don't really deserve to have us as customers or even to participate in this industry. If you're doing things like this, if you're hoping to pinch pennies by screwing over your customers and then in turn screwing over the employees at your stores because, they've been operating this way since day one, and now they're going to be in the hot seat whenever a customer walks into a store, like, you don't deserve to be in business anymore. What's another thing that they've done? Oh, yes. You remember the start of this gaming generation with the launch of the Xbox Series consoles and the PlayStation 5s that came out? It was impossible to find these things for a really long time. It took some people a year and a half, 2 years to be able to find their console of choice. GameStop made it a little bit easier for you to get a hold of these things, but at a certain point, they decided we're just going to gate you getting consoles from us through the GameStop Pro Rewards program that we have. You have to have paid, and you have to be a member of that. Otherwise, you're not going to get a console from us. And even then, if you were able to get into the queue and you had the option to buy a console available to you, because this was all done through their website, you couldn't just buy the console. You couldn't just buy the console. You had to buy a bundle that was hundreds of dollars more than you wanted to pay because they're like, well, we're just gonna make money off of this because we know we can. So instead of just selling the console, we'll sell a console, we'll sell some games with it, we'll throw in a PSN gift card, we'll throw in a headset, an extra controller. You wanted to spend like $900 today, right? So personally, I haven't been a fan of these kinds of stores for a really long time because, again, like I said earlier near the beginning of this video, everything that they've been doing in order to make a buck, in order to pinch pennies, in order to just survive, they haven't been doing it in a way that actually grants them any sort of goodwill. So they just keep floundering and floundering. And at some point, the bow is going to break. And when that happens, because of everything that I've seen them do in the past, I'm going to kind of welcome it. I don't want to see like people lose their jobs or anything like that. But, looking on places like Reddit, there's a GameStop subreddit there, and it's basically just people who work for GameStop that post there. Just go there and take a look at all the different things that are talked about. These employees are miserable. They're miserable. They hate working for this company. They hate the way that this company makes them feel. Is it the same at Game over in the UK? I can't say for certain. Again, I don't live over there. I don't have a lot of experience with them, but I have to imagine there's a lot of parallels there. This is just the world that we're living in right now. Physical copies of almost everything is going away. This is happening with movies. There's a lot of stores, major retailers here in the United States that have either severely reduced the amount of physical copies that they're carrying, or they've decided to stop carrying physical media altogether. The places that do still carry physical copies, the selection that they have is abysmal. And generally, the quality control for these products just isn't what it used to be anyway. So I do sort of feel awful in a way about the loss of physical media. I love collecting physical copies of movies. There was a video not too long ago on this channel where I discussed why I personally decided to stop buying physical copies of video games a few years ago. And it's not because I wanted to make that transition. I just want to make that clear again. It's just because I feel like it doesn't make sense. I'll leave a link to that video in the description below because I don't want to recap everything here and waste your time, but it just doesn't make sense anymore, I feel like, for video games. And if these are the companies that we have to sort of rely on in order to get our physical copies from anyway, then see ya. So anyway, yes, this whole movement, this whole thing towards digital video games becoming the norm, and we're starting to finally see major entities like GameStop suffering to a certain degree. That was written in the cards a long time ago. You could see that it was happening. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. We'll see how long it takes for a company like Game to be able to thrive without physical copies of video games, and we'll see how long GameStop in the United States are able to last, because I still don't know how they're still hanging in there. If you like hearing about stuff that's happening in the video game industry, or just hearing about video games in general, be sure to like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know whenever a new video is going to be posted live. Also, I stream live on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There's a link to that channel in the description below. I'll see you next time, everyone. Take care of yourselves.